Alright, if y'all watched my last wood cutting episode, y'all heard me talk about I had pulled the saw out, was talking to y'all on camera, even though I didn't include that on that video, telling you about how good this saws ran. Had this saw forever. It actually used to be my father's. I bought it from him. I don't know how old this saw is, but it's pretty old. It's a Stihl MS260 Pro. Never has let me down. Then of course that day I go to pull it out to cut all that firewood, couldn't get it to crank. Just kept pouring gas out of the carburetor. Kept flooding the air filter. So after tinkering around with it a while, checking, making sure certain things weren't plugged up, I determined that most likely what happens, the diaphragm inside the carburetor had dry rotted, which is not uncommon, especially for a saw this old. So I got online, got me a new carburetor, a few other parts, got me a new air filter, some fuel filters. So we're gonna see if we can get this chainsaw running today. Well, while these may look similar in a lot of ways, I'm noticing there's a couple things that are different, which I guess has to be expected. This must be a Chinese knockoff, which is kind of what I was already expecting, getting a new carburetor off of Amazon. The big difference that I see is this one's got a high and low speed adjustment. The new one, the old one, just had a low speed. That's no big deal. This bottom plate, for some reason, the Stihl one goes into the air filter, and this one does not. Now, I got a new air filter too, so let me see if it's got that same hole. Yes, it does. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do, since these look very similar, is take this bottom plate off the Stihl and put it on the new carburetor. You see this new one's got a vented hole, and this one's vented. All I'm concerned with, I think this will run without that, all I'm concerned with is this wide open hole getting trash in it, which I guess I could plug it up with something, but let me see how quick and easy it might be to swap these over, see if it's compatible. I wanted to look in here anyways, because this is what I was concerned was the problem, this bottom diaphragm. You see fuel all around this old one. You can see it's deteriorated and sucked in. So I think that was my problem all along. I didn't really see rebuild kits for these online, but what I did see was these new cheap carburetors. Had pretty good reviews, so I figured I'd try one. Looks like the part will line up, so I'm gonna try it. When you get a new carburetor, you're just guessing that the high and low speed adjustments and idle adjustments are correct. Kind of a good rule of thumb that I've always went by is to screw them all the way in and back them out about it 1.25 turns. But since I have the original carburetor that did run well before this diaphragm rotted on me, what I'm going to do is screw the adjustment screw in, count how many turns, and then I'll adjust the new one to that. That should be a decent starting point. So that was exactly 1.5 turns in. That's why I always say 1.5 usually is a good starting point. As far as the idle goes, I'll do that after I crank the saw up. So let's check this one. Alright, so all the way in until it barely bottoms out. Half, 1.5. I'll go ahead and adjust this high speed as well. right. That thing is running great. All I had to adjust there was just the idle. Just idling a little too fast. Was kicking the clutch and chain in. It's purring like a kitten. That's as good as it's ever sounded. So I don't know about these old cheap carburetors, but it's what I could find. But man, I think I paid $14 for the carburetor and a couple more bucks for a new air filter. So that's a pretty cheap fix. Way cheaper than carrying it to the store. Now I'm kind of itching to cut something. Well, sadly, majority of this looks like it's rotten, which I kind of already knew that. If you watched my last firewood video, it's in here trying to salvage some of this wood that got stored and damaged a couple years ago. I can probably get a few of these pieces out of here, split and use. Like this beginning section's rotten, but those last few, 4 or 5 there, I can split and burn for some outdoor firewood. Mainly just down here to test the saw, and it's running great. I think it's tuned just right. Chain feels a little dull. That's okay. I've had it on there a long time. I've got extra chains. I need to put a new one on. But it looks like that saw's fixed. Well, I wound up with a decent little pile. There was some rotten edges on the outside for sure, so I've got a little bit to haul away that's underneath me right here. But all this is good, solid wood. It'll be perfectly fine for burning outside, which is what we do with our wood. We haven't got a house built yet, so this is all going in a fire pit and to enjoy. This will fill up part of this rack. I got a little bit more seasoned wood out there in the woods that I'll try to fill the rest of this rack with. And I always want to try to leave one open for green or fresh wood, because we get afternoon thunderstorms or thunderstorms ahead of these cold fronts that a lot of times will blow trees down. So I would like to leave at least one rack open to where I can split up some green wood, put it in there, and let it season for next year. I'm probably going to kick this thing and fast forward, stack this wood up. I've got to head out there and load a deer feeder up that's empty. And I think we're going to call this video quits. In the next video, I'll probably wind up planting my last food plots for the year, those winter oat plots. And then we'll move on to some different chores and projects. Appreciate y'all watching.